A man does not become obsessed when he understands a woman. Obsession begins the moment his predictions fail, when she doesn't react on schedule, when she doesn't want what he thought she wanted, when she steps left while he's already congratulating himself for stepping right. That fracture, tiny, almost invisible, is where fixation is born. Men don't obsess over beauty. They obsess over disruption. Here's the uncomfortable truth most men would rather drown in podcasts than confront. Predictability is erotic poison. The woman who is easily read becomes mentally disposable. The woman who surprises a man destabilizes his sense of control. And control is the drug he didn't know he was addicted to. Men become obsessed with women who surprise them because surprise rewires the hierarchy in their head. It flips the script from, "I've got this," to, "What did I miss?" And the male ego cannot tolerate an unanswered question about its own competence. He needs to resolve it. He needs to return. He needs proximity, not for love, but for orientation. A woman who surprises a man is not chaotic. Chaos is sloppy and forgettable. Surprise is precise. It is deviation with intention, whether conscious or instinctive. She laughs where he expected offense. She withdraws where he expected pursuit. She stays calm where he expected drama. Each deviation creates a psychological debt. His mind starts circling her, trying to close the gap between expectation and reality. Men love patterns. Patterns make them feel intelligent. A woman who refuses to settle into one denies him that comfort. He can't reduce her to a type. He can't summarize her in a sentence. He can't brag about figuring her out. That lack of mastery irritates him. Irritation, when paired with attraction, mutates into obsession. This is why the women men can't stop thinking about are rarely the ones who did the most. They're the ones who did the least expected. The woman who explains herself too clearly gives him closure before he's earned it. The woman who leaves gaps forces his imagination to work overtime. And imagination is where obsession lives. There's a reason men replay certain interactions years later and forget entire relationships that were technically better. It's not about treatment. It's about cognitive impact. The woman who surprised him created a mental imprint. She interrupted his internal monologue. That interruption becomes a loop. Neuroscience backs this up, though it doesn't dress it up as seduction. Research by Wolfram Schultz published in Science showed that dopamine spikes not from reward itself, but from unexpected reward, what they call a reward prediction error. When outcomes violate expectations, the brain lights up. Translation for those who prefer results over jargon. Surprise is chemically addictive. Predictable pleasure is forgettable. Unpredictable response hijacks attention. This is why men lose composure around women who don't behave according to script. He expects enthusiasm. She's neutral. He expects resistance. She's amused. He expects availability. She's occupied. Each mismatch sends a signal to his brain that something important is happening. Importance demands focus. Focus breeds obsession. Now here's where simps get exposed. The men who rage against this dynamic are the ones who believe consistency should guarantee attachment. They think showing up the same way every day is virtue. In reality, it's anesthetic. They confuse reliability with intrigue. A woman who surprises a man isn't unreliable. She's unreadable. And unreadable things are magnetic. Men don't obsess over women who cater to them. Catering confirms status. Obsession arises when status is questioned. A woman who surprises a man subtly suggests he may not be the smartest person in the room. That suggestion alone is intoxicating and infuriating at the same time. This is why obsession often looks irrational from the outside. Friends don't see it. Logic doesn't support it. He can't even justify it properly. He just knows that when she texts, his attention snaps into place. When she goes quiet, his mind fills the silence with speculation. Speculation is the engine. The woman is just the spark. The mistake people make is assuming surprise requires performance. It doesn't. Performance is predictable once detected. True surprise comes from internal orientation. The woman is not trying to impress or withhold. She's simply not operating from the same incentives. Men sense this immediately. It makes her behavior harder to model. Hard to model behavior gets studied. Studied things get obsessed over. This is also why men often become obsessed right after they think they've lost the woman. Loss itself isn't the trigger. Miscalculation is. He thought he had leverage. He thought he understood the dynamic. He thought wrong. That realization bruises the ego in a very specific way. To repair it, he needs another interaction, then another. Obsession is just repeated attempts at recalibration. The woman who surprises a man never rushes to soothe that bruise. She doesn't clarify prematurely. She doesn't rescue him from his confusion. That would be merciful. And mercy kills obsession. She lets the discomfort linger. Not cruelly, indifferently. Indifference is more effective. Men tell themselves they want peace. What they actually crave is stimulation that doesn't feel cheap. Predictable women give peace, but no stimulation. Chaotic women give stimulation, but no respect. The woman who surprises gives both tension and composure. That combination is rare. Rarity breeds fixation. Notice how often men use the phrase, "I didn't see that coming," when describing women they can't forget. That phrase is the tell. It's not admiration. It's disorientation. His mental map failed. He needs to redraw it. She becomes the reference point. And here's the darker layer people avoid. Men obsess because surprise temporarily robs them of dominance. He can't lead what he can't predict. He can't control what he can't model. The woman doesn't challenge him directly. She simply steps outside his assumptions. That alone is enough to put him on the back foot. This is why men often reward surprising women with disproportionate effort. Calls become longer. Plans become deliberate. He starts overthinking his words. He edits himself. These are not signs of love. They are signs of strategic uncertainty. He is recalibrating in real time. The woman doesn't need to notice this overtly. In fact, noticing too much collapses the effect. Obsession feeds on asymmetry. He's thinking about her more than she's thinking about him. That imbalance is the point. What makes this dynamic so effective is that it bypasses morality entirely. There's no good or bad behavior here, only impact. The woman isn't virtuous. She isn't manipulative. She is simply not aligning her actions around male expectation. Men experience that as depth. Depth intimidates them slightly. Intimidation sharpens attention. And attention, sustained attention, is the real currency. Men will chase clarity under the illusion that clarity will calm them. It doesn't. It ends the obsession. That's why men who finally get the girl they were obsessed with often lose interest. The mystery collapses. The pattern locks in. The dopamine drops. Obsession evaporates, leaving confusion in its place. The women who remain unforgettable are the ones who never fully resolve in his mind. Not because they played games, but because they never organized themselves around being understood. By now, some of you are uncomfortable because you recognize yourself on the wrong side of this equation. You've been consistent, communicative, emotionally transparent, and ignored. Others are uncomfortable because you recognize the power of doing less and letting men sit with their uncertainty. Good. Discomfort is usually the first honest reaction. This is only the beginning. Men don't like to admit this, but obsession often begins as humiliation. Not public humiliation, the kind that leaves marks, the private kind. The silent realization that the woman in front of him just moved in a way he didn't anticipate, and worse, didn't bother to explain. His internal narrative stutters. The smooth story he was telling himself about who has leverage falters. That's the moment the hook goes in. A woman who surprises a man does not defeat him head on. She doesn't challenge his authority or mock his intelligence. That would give him something concrete to fight. Instead, she lets him defeat himself. He overextends. He assumes. He relaxes at the wrong moment. And when he looks up, she's already somewhere else. Emotionally, psychologically, sometimes literally. Men are not haunted by women who reject them cleanly. They are haunted by women who exit at an angle they didn't see coming. This is where obsession sharpens. The male mind is territorial, but not in the way movies portray. It doesn't just want possession. It wants confirmation of superiority. When a woman surprises him, she denies that confirmation. She doesn't play impressed when he expects awe. She doesn't become compliant when he applies pressure. She doesn't escalate when he escalates. She breaks rhythm. Rhythm is how men maintain control. Break it, and he starts watching her more closely than he ever intended. Surprise works because it reframes the interaction from conquest to puzzle. And men love puzzles they didn't choose. Chosen puzzles are hobbies. Unchosen puzzles are obsessions. The woman didn't sign up to be solved. He appointed himself to the task. Watch how quickly men become emotionally invested once they feel intellectually behind. He starts asking questions he doesn't normally ask. He listens instead of performing. He remembers details because details might be clues. He's no longer trying to win. He's trying not to lose ground he didn't know he was standing on. This is why obsession so often masquerades as chemistry. Chemistry is just the body's response to uncertainty, combined with desire. Remove uncertainty, and the so-called chemistry evaporates. The woman who surprises keeps uncertainty alive without theatrics. She doesn't manufacture mystery. She simply refuses to collapse herself into something easily consumable. Men are conditioned to believe that interest follows effort, that if they do enough, say enough, show enough consistency, they'll eventually be rewarded. This works with women who are negotiating from scarcity. It fails catastrophically with women who are not. When effort does not produce predictable results, the male brain panics slightly. It doubles down. That's obsession pretending to be perseverance. The woman doesn't need to punish him. She doesn't need to play cold. Her greatest advantage is that she doesn't rush to reassure. Reassurance is the release valve. Close it too early, and pressure builds. Pressure is where fixation thrives. This is also why men become obsessed with women who leave first. Not angrily, not dramatically, but cleanly. A clean exit suggests self-containment. It suggests that the woman was never fully dependent on the interaction for validation or direction. Men feel this as loss of influence. Influence lost is influence men want back, even if they don't actually want the woman anymore. Obsession is often about restoring power, not intimacy. There's a quiet cruelty in how effective this is, and that's what makes people uncomfortable. Not because it's immoral, but because it works without permission. The woman doesn't need to ask for leverage. She acquires it by not centering male reaction as the axis of her behavior. Men sense that immediately. It unnerves them. They are used to being the reference point. Psychologists have observed that intermittent reinforcement creates stronger attachment than consistent reward. A study published in Journal of Personality and Social Psychology demonstrated that unpredictable responses increase emotional dependency and cognitive fixation. Again, the academic language is polite. The reality is not. The mind grips harder when it doesn't know when or if the reward is coming. The woman who surprises doesn't dangle rewards deliberately. She just doesn't dispense them on demand. Men will tell themselves stories to justify the obsession. She's different. She's deep. She's not like the others. These narratives are not compliments. They're coping mechanisms. They allow him to rationalize why he's thinking about someone who hasn't actually given him much. What she gave him was disruption. Disruption is expensive to ignore. And here's the detail that separates amateurs from women who instinctively understand the game. The surprise is never loud. Loud surprises turn into drama, and drama burns out quickly. The effective surprise is understated. A delayed response when he expected immediacy. A calm reaction where he expected intensity. An exit without explanation where he expected negotiation. Each one communicates the same thing without words. His expectations are not the organizing principle here. That message lands harder than any insult. Men obsessed with women like this often oscillate between admiration and resentment. Admiration because she represents something autonomous. Resentment because autonomy resists control. He wants to get closer, but proximity doesn't give him the upper hand. It just gives him more data and more questions. This is the moment where many women sabotage themselves. They sense his increased attention and rush to stabilize it. They explain. They soften. They make themselves legible. They mistake obsession for fragility. It's not fragile. It's fuel. And when you extinguish it prematurely, the man feels relief, not gratitude. Relief is the enemy of desire. Now somewhere around here, people start asking what to do. That's always the tell. They want tactics, scripts, timelines. That hunger for instruction is the same hunger that keeps them predictable. The women who surprise men are not following checklists. They are operating from an internal position that does not depend on male certainty. This is exactly why I offer one-on-one coaching. And yes, it's pinned in the comment section. Not because you need motivation, but because you need recalibration. Generic advice can't identify where you leak leverage, where you over-explain, where you rush intimacy, where you soothe male discomfort at the expense of your own positioning. One-on-one coaching is surgical. We look at your specific patterns with men and restructure them so your behavior creates impact without performance. The benefit isn't that men like you more. It's that they respond differently without knowing why. I've also finished the landing page. It's in the description and the pinned comment. Go there. Read the free PDF. Watch the free video. Subscribe to the newsletter while you're there. That's where the more precise material lives. The kind that doesn't survive public misinterpretation. And yes, the feminine game is open for pre-order. That's where this goes deeper. Courses, structure, execution. Not theory for entertainment. Application for results. This is what my weekly newsletter looks like. This is where I sometimes say things that YouTube doesn't let me say. I'll be sending 3 weekly, and make sure to check under promotions or spam folder for my emails. Back to the obsession. Men become obsessed with women who surprise them because those women introduce friction into male certainty. Not resistance, friction. Resistance invites conquest. Friction slows him down. It makes him reconsider. It forces him to observe instead of assume. Observation is intimacy before emotion ever enters the picture. This is why men often feel exposed around these women. They sense that their usual tricks won't land cleanly. Humor doesn't disarm her. Confidence doesn't intimidate her. Withdrawal doesn't panic her. Each failed maneuver increases his self-awareness, and self-awareness is uncomfortable. He'd rather be dominant than conscious. She forces consciousness, and consciousness is addictive when it's paired with desire. By this point, the man is no longer chasing the woman as much as he's chasing coherence. He wants the story to make sense again. He wants to know where he stands. The woman who surprises never rushes to give him that clarity. Not out of cruelty, but because clarity offered too soon benefits the man, not the dynamic. Obsession persists as long as the question remains unanswered. This is the middle of the maze. By the time a man is rewarding a woman who never competed for him, he has already rewritten history in his favor. He tells himself he chose her freely, that he wasn't influenced, that he simply felt inspired. Men are sentimental about their autonomy. They need to believe their generosity comes from abundance, not provocation. The truth is less flattering. His generosity was extracted by silence, posture, and refusal to audition. What men don't articulate, but absolutely feel, is relief. Relief that someone finally didn't ask them to be the sun. The competing woman needs him to decide, to choose, to validate, to crown her. That's work disguised as desire. The woman who doesn't compete quietly removes that burden. She is not waiting to be selected. She is already moving. Men mistake this relief for attraction. They reward it because it feels like oxygen after being smothered by expectation. This is where the dynamic becomes almost comical. Men swear they hate pressure, yet they unconsciously reward the only woman who never applied any. She didn't apply pressure because she wasn't applying at all. She was not trying to win. She was deciding whether the environment suited her. Men recognize that orientation immediately. It flips the frame. Suddenly, he's the one wondering if he qualifies. Men reward women who don't compete, because those women expose the lie men live inside. The lie that all women want them equally. The lie that attention is endless. The lie that they are the prize by default. When a woman doesn't compete, she quietly suggests scarcity, not of men, but of herself. Scarcity reframes value instantly. The man doesn't become kinder. He becomes strategic. Watch how his behavior shifts. He stops testing boundaries recklessly. He becomes more precise. He follows through. He offers without being asked. Not because he's evolved, but because he senses that this woman will not stay out of politeness. She will leave without drama. Men fear dramatic women. They respect decisive ones. Respect unlocks reward. This is where simps short-circuit. They believe rewards should follow effort, not positioning. They think if a woman tries hard enough, men will reciprocate. That belief is how they end up resenting the very women they chase. The competing woman exhausts men. The non-competing woman intrigues them. Intrigue outperforms effort every time. Men are not rewarding femininity. They are rewarding self-containment. The woman who doesn't compete doesn't need to convince him she's valuable. Her life already demonstrates it. She doesn't over-explain. She doesn't negotiate attraction. She doesn't crowd the space with availability. Men reward this because it forces them to earn access instead of assuming it. Here's the irony that irritates people. Men often reward these women more generously than they ever intended to. They spend more money. They invest more time. They offer commitment earlier than planned. And then they rationalize it as different circumstances. It wasn't the circumstances. It was the woman's refusal to center him as the goal. Men don't reward women who don't compete out of kindness. They do it out of anxiety. Anxiety that this woman might leave before he secured his place in her world. Anxiety that he might be irrelevant. Anxiety that someone else, quieter, sharper, less eager, will recognize her value faster than he did. This anxiety doesn't feel like fear to him. It feels like motivation. That's why he enjoys it. The woman who competes triggers complacency. The woman who doesn't triggers alertness. Alert men are generous men. Complacent men are stingy. This has nothing to do with romance and everything to do with leverage. You'll notice that men often accuse these women of being hard to read. That's not a flaw. That's a defense. If he could read her easily, he would stop paying attention. Men pay attention when they feel slightly behind. The woman who doesn't compete keeps him just behind enough to keep moving. And no, this is not about pretending not to care. Pretense leaks. Men can smell it. This is about genuinely not arranging your behavior around male approval. The difference is subtle, but devastating. One is a tactic, the other is a posture. Men punish tactics. They reward posture. This is why women who try to copy this behavior often fail. They withdraw abruptly. They go cold. They manufacture distance. That's competition in reverse. Men sense the effort. The woman who doesn't compete isn't withholding. She's occupied. Her attention is selective, not strategic. That selectivity is what men feel is value. Men reward women who don't compete because those women mirror how men want to feel about themselves. Autonomous, unbothered, self-directed. Being around her allows him to borrow that feeling temporarily. He associates that feeling with her. Reward becomes association. By now, some of you are realizing that this dynamic has nothing to do with fairness. Good. Fairness is a bedtime story. Adults tell themselves to sleep through power dynamics. Men don't operate on fairness. They operate on tension, ego, and perceived scarcity. The woman who doesn't compete manipulates none of these directly. She simply refuses to neutralize them for male comfort. And that refusal is expensive. Men pay for it with effort, with consistency, with restraint, with investment. They call it respect. It is, but respect born of consequence, not courtesy. If you're still asking whether this is healthy, you're not listening. Health has nothing to do with attraction. Attraction responds to polarity, not politeness. The woman who doesn't compete creates polarity without aggression. That's why men don't resent her for it. They admire her quietly and chase her privately. This is also why men often elevate these women socially. They introduce them proudly. They reference them often. They protect their image, not because the woman demanded status, but because his association with her reflects upward. Men use women as mirrors. A woman who doesn't compete reflects strength. Men like how they look next to that. At the end of the day, men reward women who don't compete because competition confirms hierarchy, while non-competition dissolves it. And when hierarchy dissolves, men scramble to rebuild it in their favor. Rewards are scaffolding. They hope generosity will buy position. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. That uncertainty keeps them engaged. If this unsettles you, good. It means you're finally seeing the mechanism instead of the myth. Men aren't mysterious. They're patterned. The pattern just isn't flattering. If you enjoyed this, subscribe. Not because you're loyal, but because you're curious enough to keep watching. And I want to hear from you. Drop a comment and tell me this. What have you personally seen men reward that they swore they didn't care about? Welcome to the dark side of your mind, an armory disguised as advice. Everything here exists to give you clarity sharper than the games being played against you. The reading is where I dissect your situation with precision. What he meant, what he didn't, what you missed. About 1,000 words, plus one follow-up question to tighten the strategy. The case file is the full autopsy, a complete psychological breakdown in writing, plus a private audio message so you hear the parts most people avoid. One follow-up to lock it in. If you want speed, there's the whisper. 400 words. Direct. Unfiltered. No extra dialogue. If you prefer tone and voice, the weight of the message itself, the transmission gives you a private audio response. No follow-up. No hand-holding. And if your situation is messy enough for multiple angles, buy 2 services, and the third is free. Strategy rewards commitment. If you want the truth delivered publicly, without exposing yourself, there's the public whisper. One question, one strategic answer, posted for others to learn from. Short, clean, no follow-up. You already know why you're here. You ask your question, and within 72 hours, you get clarity most people never develop. Emotional discipline, psychological leverage, the ability to stop repeating patterns that drain you. The dark side of your mind isn't here to soothe you. It's here to change how you move.